Welcome to the Epic Company Culture Podcast, where your host, Josh Sweeney, will give you, the business leaders, HR professionals, and company culture aficionados, the knowledge you need to take your company culture to the next level.
Hello, my name is Josh Sweeney, and welcome to the Epic Company Culture Podcast. Before I get started, I would like to thank Prototype Prime for this amazing podcasting space. The topic of today is what your technology says about you. Now, you may wonder, what does technology have to do with culture? How do these things align? The reason they align is because I think the perception and use of technology in today's environment are very strongly correlated to the culture, how things get done, the efficiency, the overall feel of what happens in a given environment. And in order to convey that, what I wanted to do is come up with a few examples or share a few examples with you from the customer perspective and experiences that customers feel around your company based on the technology that you use and the culture you're conveying and your concepts around how you handle technology shifts. So, in order to bring this home, we're going to start off with a banking experience that I had. So I walk into a bank a few weeks ago and decide to sit down with one of the bankers. They're going to help me out with some items. And first thing I notice is obviously you'll hear from my podcast and see my background. I'm a technologist, so I couldn't work for anybody with antiquated technology. It just wouldn't happen. It has to be somewhat up to date within a reasonable level. So I picked these things out. But anyways, I'm sitting with this banker, and what I see is this old school kind of square monitor, right? It's not the big CRT that's, 5 feet deep or anything like that. It's just the square version. It's not widescreen. You can tell it's probably been on that desk for a while or maybe a couple of desks over the years. And like, okay, no big deal. But then the challenge starts to grow. You start to kind of get the vibe and feel what's happening. Well, I can see the screen because they're sharing some information with me. So it's tilted a little bit in my direction. And I see the screen and like, wow, that software looks like it's been used for the last 20 years, right? So the navigation, the UX, the experience isn't guiding them through. They're having to go through and help me with this process, and they're all over the place. So it's a very inefficient process and inefficient UX and user experience for them. And I'm having to wait longer as a customer because they're having to kind of figure it out, right? Oh, that's in another section. I have to write this down. And I see them visually, they're taking notes to remember because when they go to the next screen, they have to write it down on another screen. And so, the whole experience is just not as good as it could be. And then sure enough, part of the way through the process, the computers, they're hitting enter and trying to pull up some of my information, and it's taking a while to load. And they're like, oh, this computer is always slow. Well, I don't know if it's the computer, I don't know if it's the network, or I don't know if it's both or whatever it is. But as an experience that I'm having, what I'm seeing is the culture at that bank has no value or doesn't put value on technology and efficiency and what that banker's experience is with their systems or with what the customer experience is. Because now, they're waiting, I'm waiting, it takes longer. And, in conjunction with that, there's a whole line of people waiting to see or in the waiting area for the bankers that are sitting in chairs that have been sitting there for a while to be the next person in. So, I think there is actually an economic impact to that culture of not being at least up to date enough on technology to provide amazing experience. So, those are some things that would need to be looked into. What is that experience? How is your outlook and your culture and how you treat technology impacting your employees? How is it impacting the customer experience? Another example that I like to use is in my previous firm, we built a iPad application that was basically a CRM and a sales tool for heavy equipment rental dealers. And heavy equipment, they did sales and rental of this heavy equipment. So think like Caterpillar and Kubota and these large pieces of earth-moving equipment, things like that. Well, the reason that it was built is because a lot of companies were really falling behind on how they worked with clients. They were a more a less technology savvy organization. They're out on site in places that probably were the laggards in getting internet. They're on construction sites. Technology wasn't a big part of that business for many years. And so they would go on site in construction trailers and figure out what equipment people needed. And then they would go back to their truck and boot up their laptop and insert a wire, like a Sprint card or a cellular card, and try and get them numbers and make all these calls and just take all these actions that took forever to give somebody a quote on the equipment they wanted to buy or rent. And so what we saw was, with that, it wasn't the best experience. It wasn't the best experience for the client. It wasn't the best experience for the employee, and they had to jump through a lot of hoops in a time where in many other industries, people are walking around with iPads and getting things done very efficiently. So we built an iPad app where they could be standing in the trailer, type in exactly what that person wanted, pull up inventory levels, book it, and send them a quote or an estimate or a document to sign while standing in that trailer. So it goes from this very large task to a very efficient task. The other thing that's happening that we all need to keep in mind is, with a culture of technology versus one that is not a culture that's attuned to technology, the business challenge is that you start to get left behind. So what we found in that industry was Sunbelt was actually just crushing it from a technology perspective. We were building these applications for other dealerships that were non-Sunbelt dealers. Well, Sunbelt, if the person that worked at Sunbelt went on site, they had put millions of dollars into an iPad app that was amazingly seamless, had all the data at their fingertips. They could pretty much do anything from a construction trailer in front of a client. So that was a fantastic experience. The time to close was shortened. There's all these different benefits. So again, how am I, comparing technology to culture? Well, one culture is very technology oriented, or at least has a strong focus on technology. The other one doesn't. And over time, those gaps widen further and further, especially as technology accelerates. So that's a challenge that many businesses have when they don't have a focus on technology. The last one I'd like to highlight is one many of you are probably familiar with, is the doctor's office. How many times have you filled out the same paperwork for the doctor's office? Let me get this straight. The receptionist, you're looking at her and you're like, so I've filled this out 10 times and I've been coming here for 5 years and now I have to fill it out again. And it's all in the computer, but you can't pre-print. You can't give me a form with everything filled in, but just what I need to fill in that's new or updated. I have to go through this whole process of taking this clipboard and then filling out the information. And then you're going to go retype that in and key it in and go through, or maybe even go through a paper process. Whereas now you're going into doctor's offices and you're sitting down at a computer, you're knocking it out quickly. You're giving them even more and better efficient information that's going streamlined right into their process. And then you're walking in, like I think I went to a doctor a few months ago and she walked in with an iPad, or the nurse came in with an iPad, the assistant, I'm not sure what the title is for the person that helps the doctor, the person who comes and sees you before the doctor, that you always have to wait on. And they come in with an iPad, take a bunch of notes, and then the doctor then comes in with an iPad and has everything right there. So it's this digital format. So the experience as a customer is better, and the experience for each of the employees is better because things aren't getting lost. It's all digital. The transfer happens seamlessly. So again, think about the experience with the teller. What's the experience of the employee? What's the experience of of myself in that case, or what's the experience of the customer? Same with the heavy equipment. What is that speed to quote? How is the culture and how you treat technology through the culture of your business and the lens that you see it through impacting your employees and impacting your culture? And remember that over this generational shift that we're seeing, technology is going to be a more and more instrumental piece. So what we recommend is you take a look at your technology, the culture of how you treat technology, and make sure you're keeping up to date so you can hire and retain the right employees that are used to having that type of information at their fingertips.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Epic Company Culture Podcast with Josh Sweeney. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. For additional content and transcripts, visit epicculture.co. If you have questions or topics you would like us to address or expand on, tweet us at epicculture1 or email at podcast@epicculture.co.